Let's go ahead and break down everything that Elon Musk said in the X Takeover 2025. This will be a super fast recap. I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible and get all of the relevant information that Elon talked about. So first off, they started talking about Starship and how nobody's created not only an orbital rocket, but a reusable heat shield. I thought that was interesting. He was coughing quite a bit at the beginning. I thought maybe he was sick, but I didn't hear him cough at the end, so maybe he just had a tickle in his throat. Whatever. He says this orbital. He talked about orbital or to orbit, refilling, not refueling. He said there's a big difference because most of it is liquid oxygen. I thought that was very interesting. He said it's tricky to do, and no organization is even attempting to do this. So SpaceX is just incredible. The host then proceeded to ask, what does a self-sustaining city look like on Mars? And he said, well, the government will be up to the Martians. We have artist impressions, but we'll have glass domes initially, and you'll have to walk outside in a Mars suit. Fair enough. Okay. Then he said, people ask me oftentimes, like, why should we be focusing on this? And why aren't we focusing what we have here on Earth? And he said, 99% of what we should be focusing on, you're right, should be on Earth, but we should have a 1% hedge in terms of being a space-faring civilization and multiplanetary species, nothing that we haven't heard Elon talk about before. The audio was kind of rough. They actually had a technical difficulty, so there was it kind of cut in and out, so that's kind of why I wanted to do this summary. He said hopefully SpaceX goes interstellar, but that probably won't be on Elon's lifetime. In his lifetime. And then they brought up robotaxis, and they started saying like, hey, Elon, what's going to change with the Tesla lineup? Are the robotaxis going to replace the Model 3 and the Model Y? And he said it's going to be like Uber and Airbnb, where you can put things on and take things off. This isn't stuff we haven't heard about before. He said Tesla will own a fleet of robotaxis. And then they started asking him questions more about Tesla, like what's the paradox? Like, how are you going to, if you're making the best cars, why are people going to be wanting to buy more? And how does this robotaxi thing work out? And he's like, hey, like I can't talk about a lot of this stuff because Tesla's a publicly traded company. He said it like 3 or 4 times. He got kind of frustrated. He said that the roads, this is probably like one of the biggest things. He said the Roadster demo will be aiming for the end of this year or early next year. So in my notes, I put Q4 2025 or Q1 2026. And he says it won't meaningfully impact the financials of the company, but it'll be pretty cool. They asked for a roadmap for Optimus, and he again got really frustrated and said, like, you guys are asking highly sensitive situations around the value of the company. I can't answer these. And in my opinion, they need to be a little careful about how, like, they should. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to get like the headline question, these hosts, but you got to be a little careful because you want to keep Elon coming back. Try to ask more open-ended questions or more technical questions, like, hey, with what you've done in Austin, what's been the biggest learning? Like, what's been the biggest learning curve? Like, ask a little more specific questions and don't leave them open-ended where the value of the company could be affected, because then Elon could get in trouble. So if they're listening to this, Tesla owners of Silicon Valley, that'd be my biggest advice, because that's what I wanted to hear. It's like, hey, what's the biggest technical hurdle that you've had to overcome since you've launched the Robotaxi service? And I think that a technical question he'd be more able to answer than a valuation question, if that makes sense. Back to the summary. So he says that during the Optimus lineup, they're at this point where version 2, they could have produced a few thousand of them, or they could wait till version 3, which is much better. And most components aren't the same from version 2 to version 3. So version 3 will be drastically better. So they could pause production on the Optimus until they got to version 3. Then they'd be able to mass produce these. And he's like, who wouldn't want to see 3PO or R2D2? Something that Elon has always said. And in my notes, I was like, well, of course folks want one, but not every person's email to spend 20 to 40K. And then he clarified that he thinks these are once it ramps up, right? So it's kind of like the cost will come down once it ramps up, but initially I think they'll be much more expensive. He said, and they'll be around $50,000 per. And just, it's going to be about like the same crowd that can afford a Tesla is going to be like the same crowd that can afford one of these robots, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. And he said this should generate around $30 trillion in revenue eventually. And he said these are good. Like the following questions were pretty good in my opinion. They said, where do you think what's the biggest value Optimus will have? And he's like, medical caretakers, 24 hours a day for a nurse and helper. Some of the questions I have is like, you said 24 hours a day. Are they going to be able to swap out their own batteries? Like, is it going to be a battery pack? Do they need to plug into a wall? Like, is it going to have to be a Tesla charger? Like, what is this going to look like in terms of charging and making sure that it is 24 hours a day? He also said that that question wasn't answered. It's a question I have. He also said that Optimus will be highly effective for dangerous work, repetitive tasks, or anything that risks life or injury. They asked in 10 years, what will be more transformative, FSD or Optimus? He said Optimus. It's very hard to do. And they talked about, then they got into the AI subject. And he said that AI has not invented new technologies yet. So it's not AGI and has not invented physics. They asked if Grok becomes smarter than any humans, what role do humans play? And he said there will be many AI, not just Grok. There will be probably 5 main competitor AI. And he said it's going to happen. He said he saw AI happening whether he participated or not, and he could either choose to be a spectator or participant. So he started to become a participant in the AI field, and you can obviously see where AI has really taken off from XAI's perspective and how much compute and how much money they're putting into this. He said that he's focusing on Grok being factually accurate more than politically correct. He says Grok has a long way to go, but the goal is maximum sooth seeking. Grok isn't here yet, but the goal is to develop new technologies, have medical breakthroughs. He said the economy of the future will look drastically different than it does today. There will be no shortage of products or services for anyone. The potential gains are astounding to even think about. It could increase the economy 10x. The challenge will be finding meaning in life. Meaning, if you can think of something and just accomplish it in a few blinks, then what's like, you often heard that it's not the goal, it's not the destination you're seeking, it's the journey to the destination. And so I think that's kind of what Elon's saying, is that journey is going to be significantly shrunk, and you won't be able to kind of have as much purpose. And he said that his biggest goal is making AI useful and safe and loving humanity, useful and friendly. He said in his life he's never seen a technology advance as fast as AI has. And he says it's kind of a scary analogy, but it's like AI is a supersonic tsunami. And he says you do need to pair AI with robotics. Then the host then asked him, "What do you think what keeps you up at night?" question. He said, and he then kind of reframed it and said, "Since you've doubled down as like wartime CEO, what keeps you up at night?" And he said, "AI safety, being aligned with humanity, and AI bettering humanity." And he said he's kind of reframing a new goal for Tesla. He said the original goal for Tesla was the advent of sustainable energy. It's longer, but that's the summarized version. And he said now the goal of Tesla is autonomous cars and Optimus. And he said you can go look at Kathy Wood and ARC's analysis. They've been in the right in the past, and he thinks they'll be right this time. He says that Tesla could get up to a $25 trillion valuation. The audience clapped and they were freaking out. And Elon said, well, the math is clear. AI is a double-edged sword. It's a benefit, but it's also a risk. But he thinks that most likely it'll be good. He said we have to be paranoid about making sure that it is good. He then went on a super long topic about Neuralink, which I personally really like. But even me, somebody that loves Neuralink and loves listening to Elon speak, this got to kind of long and drawn out. My audience kind of fell off the live stream because it was kind of, I hate to say it, but boring. He started off with some really cool things, saying that like they're working on fixing serious medical issues, proving out the safety and efficacy of it. And then they kind of got into the sci-fi realm. And this is kind of where people started falling off. He's like, well, theoretically, you could upload your memories, download your memories, and then you could do it through a robot. How do you connect Grok to it in the future? It was all very sci-fi. And I think that's where a lot of my audience fell off. It was really interesting. I just saw the steep fall off of people watching. So and I wasn't talking. Normally people fall off when I talk, but this time it was Elon talking. So I was like, this is interesting. People don't see, because it's so far away that I don't think people really care. People love to hear about Robotaxi. They like to hear about Starship. They like to hear about Mars, because that seems a little closer than being able to kind of like upload a version of yourself and then download it. He talked about I did write in my notes here that it's amazing at his range of knowledge, because we started with rockets, then we went to cars, then we went to AI, and then he was going into some pretty complex topics on the brain. So I'm like, hey, like love him or hate him, he's a pretty intelligent dude. He said that the monkeys have had the telepathy. I can't say that word. Telepathy. Okay, whatever, you know what I mean, and cortex chips. And he says the monkeys are very happy. One of the, I think it was FDA, if I'm not mistaken, organizations came to inspect the monkey center, and they said that they've never seen a monkey enclosure this nice. And he said monkeys are just like humans. They love playing video games and eating snacks. If you haven't seen the video from 4 years ago of the monkey playing Pong, I think that's what he's referencing. And he said that the humanoid robots and Neuralink will definitely intersect. He said he's learned a fascination for how the human body works. And he said that of everything that he's learned, the spine is a little bit weirdly structured, meaning like everybody gets back pain. But he says that's something that Neuralink would be able to solve. And he just said how amazed he is at the human body. And he said that almost all the muscles in your hand are actually controlled from your forearm. And so he said like 50% of the complexity of Optimus is building the hands correctly, and the rest of the 50% is the body. So just this section is 50% more difficult to like is 50% of the problem to solve when it comes to Optimus. He talked about X as the everything app, and it's really interesting. It was a little bit of a bummer because I was really kind of on the Elon train when it came to acquiring X, but he seems a lot more invested into XAI this time than X. And he's like, oh, it's a platform for positivity. Well, he says it's a platform for maximum truth seeking. It's a platform for freedom of speech, which is all good. But when he bought X, he was like, this is going to be great. I'll make sure that every Tesla investor benefits from this. And so he was really on that train of like X, X, X. And then now it's kind of like XAI, and X is kind of just the platform for XAI. I don't know. He said, well, we've done quite a bit. We've made, you're now able to upload long form videos and have long form text. And he's like, we're improving the DM system to the point where if you held a gun to my head, I couldn't even tell you what were in those DMs. So he says that they're working on the X money, which is just a few months away. He says it's in beta with the company. He talked about community notes again. Like, I feel like X, he spent the money on, and he became more fascinated. Like, my dad and I have talked about this a little bit, and you can go watch our podcast. We talk about it, but he launched X, realized that he spent as much money as he did, and he saw how much money he could make, and it wasn't as much as he could make with XAI. So I think that's why. I don't know. That's a little bit of speculation there. He said it's poetic to go from PayPal to X Money, completing the product line. He says Grok, you can now ask on a per post basis. He said Grok for advertising, you can now ask if this product is useful or not. He says that X is the least untrustworthy social media network. He said it's definitely not Facebook, which was funny. He said X is far from perfect. And Elon wants Grok to be the most truth-seeking AI and the funniest AI. He said AI is likely to be 80 to 90% awesome. We just don't want that 10 to 20% to be like a Terminator situation. Then the host then asked, how do humans remain relevant? And he said, well, walking is still important even though we have bikes and cars, and like biking is still important even though we have cars. So do bikes make running irrelevant? No. And so that was an interesting way to frame it. So that gave me something to think about. The host then asked, what gives you hope for today personally? And he said he thinks the future will be very interesting and exciting. And he wouldn't want to be at any other point in human history. Interestingly enough, he did not talk about politics at all. I wonder if he told them like, hey, I'm happy to do this X Takeover event with you guys, but just please don't talk about like President Trump. Like, I don't want to get into it. I wouldn't be surprised if he said something like that. I don't know. Then they came on stage to kind of give thanks to Elon and give him a gift. They read this like small poem to him, and they said that he was betrayed, mocked, and his name was tracked through the mud. His cars were vandalized, and they had like a reel of people like saying thanks to Elon. And it was a little awkward, the guy reading it. I don't know why the host didn't read it. They had some other guy come up on stage. And then he said they had thousands of people write letters, and they compressed them into a brick. And they called it the brick of belief. It was creative. Sure, I'll give them that. And they said that this brick of belief is, I don't know. They tried to connect a lot of things, but it was a little disconnected, a little awkward, but it was the thought that counts. I'm sure Elon appreciated it. I mean, like, what kind of gift do you give the richest person in the world? It's hard. So you kind of can't have to give them something that's like, you can't put money on it, invaluable. So that was kind of interesting, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the recap of everything that Elon Musk said at the X Takeover event. It wasn't anything that we didn't hear. I want to hear more about like what they've learned with the Robotaxi launches. Some of the questions that I would have asked are like that, or like, hey, what's something that you've learned about Robotaxi since it's launched in Austin? Like, has it been better than expected, or like nothing that would kind of affect the valuation of the company, but just learning more about the experience? Like, hey, what's the next hurdle with making FSD perfect? Like, when do we get to the point where we don't have to disengage to text because it's more unsafe because you have to disengage FSD? I want to hear a few more technical questions, like what happened at the launch pad? Like, did you guys do further investigations? The Starship that blew up, like, was like, that's never happened before. Like, what happened? And just kind of a little more technical, because a lot of these questions Elon gets, he'll answer on X on a daily basis, and they're kind of generic answers. And I know Elon is a very technical mind, and so I'd love to kind of get more into the technical mind of Elon. If I ever get the opportunity to talk to Elon, rest assured, those will be my kind of questions to him. Are the technical hurdles, like why hasn't X money gone as quickly as you thought? Like, what are the hurdles there? Like, why is X money going to be different? How does that work? things like that. So like what are the biggest hurdles with Optimus? Like why has it got taken a little bit longer than anticipated? So some more of those specific things rather than the wide generic things that we can kind of predict Elon's answers to at this point. But nonetheless, super grateful for the Tesla owners of Silicon Valley for putting this on. Um, and yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. And if you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comments. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing. Like always, see you next time. Thanks for watching.